We usually have a smaller attendance when the weather is so beautiful. Is it as beautiful up by you as it is here?
It's gorgeous.
It's
Yes.
gorgeous here too, and cool and beautiful and blue and green. So we're going to take just a minute and have a brief meditation to kind of get us all connected. So if you have things on your lap, you might want to put them somewhere else and get yourself in a relaxed position so you can enjoy this and connect in. Welcome back. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Chicago IANDS on this gorgeous day. We have wonderful things waiting for us today. We have our guest speaker is Dr. Sally Littleton, and she is a psychotherapist from Traverse City, Michigan. And I wanted to just briefly mention that we will also have a psychotherapist from Chicago next month. It will be Dr. Susan Weishart, who will be talking about the work of two of her teachers, Brian Weiss and Michael Newton, and she will be discussing life between lives, which seems really a good time to do it. I don't know why in the last couple of weeks I've had so many people say something about where they were going when they die or where they went when they died, or there's just been a lot of discussion about that kind of life between life stuff, so it seems like a good time to talk about it. So please join us next month for that. And second brief announcement is, we would appreciate a donation. We don't demand payment because I feel that this information is so important that we want to get it out to as many people as possible. And so we don't charge admission, but we do request a donation, whatever you can afford. We leave that up to you. You can go to our website, www.chicagoians.org, and go to the button that says donate. and we would appreciate that very much. We don't take in enough to cover our expenses, but our guides so far we're covered. So don't know how much longer that's going to last, but we'll find out. Anyway, so I happened to meet Sally Littleton recently through a mutual friend, and I was so excited to hear because uh, she's had an amazing journey from a young spiritual child who had a near-death experience and related spiritual experiences, which kept her kind of tuned into spiritual life. And as she grew up, she became a psychotherapist, and she touched base with a lot of these other spiritual things, picking up the ones that were most resonant to her and bringing them into her life until she finally found Reiki. And uh, somehow she knew that was it. And she transitioned into a Reiki healer. And she has her own business now in Traverse City, Michigan, and she concentrates on Reiki healing. I'm going to turn it over to her and let her tell you all about what she does and how she does it and how she got where she is. So grateful to have you. It's so nice that you can be with us, Sally. Thank you for being
Thank you
here.
so much for inviting me, Diane. I really appreciate the invitation.
Glad to have you. I'm going to turn it over to you and tell everyone if you have any questions, please put them on the chat. And when we get towards the end, we'll address those. So it's all
Hello.
yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Sally Littleton. As Diane said, I have a long history of spiritual connection. When I was a small child, I felt a strong connection. I'm not sure I'm not exactly sure how old I was, but I know that my mother did teach me to pray, and that was a practice from early on. And it was a very simple prayer. It was one some of you may know. It was, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And then it was, God bless mommy, daddy, everyone in my family, sort of thing, friends. It's interesting because most of my life, I did not have, I don't think as a child, I wasn't terribly afraid of dying. And maybe, I've heard as a psychotherapist, I remember it being said early on in my training that was really bad prayer because it could scare children and everything. And I didn't find that to be true. I always felt that safety in the spiritual connection. And I do remember being afraid. The only time I remember being afraid as a child was that, this is going to date me. You're going to all know how old I am when I tell you this, but in the 50s, the late 50s, I think it was, but exactly when, I don't know. There was a huge scare. I grew up in California. I lived in California, and there was this huge scare about nuclear war. And we had begun, this was not the missile crisis, that was later, but this was where, and I think this practice was all over the country to some degree, but I think it might have started in California. But in any case, we were instructed to get under our desk at school, and because imminently we could, a bomb could be going off. And I remember hearing all kinds of things about, we lived in Bakersfield at this time, that's where I was born, and how, it would take so long for everything to come over the mountains, and when, because they'd hit at Los Angeles. And I mean, there were just all these details that I remember that I'm sure no one told me specifically, but I must have overheard my parents talking or something. And I remember going to my mother and saying, I was very afraid of this, and her telling me not to be afraid, because if something happened, then I would just be with God and it would be okay. And that was helpful. And also my father built a bomb shelter, which was not really a bomb shelter that would have saved us, but that was also comforting, so those two things were strong for me. So anyway, I went on, and I had a pretty normal, I didn't have a normal child in some ways. I had a lot of very scary experiences due to my dysfunctional family and violence and things like that. But I always felt a connection, a really strong connection. And many people talk about these kinds of experiences as their angels guiding them. And that may be true. I never thought of it that way. I always thought of it as God. But the worst of the violence that happened in my childhood, I missed, because I would get a message telling me not to go home. So I would not go home from school. That was usually what it was. Or maybe I was at a friend's house and I was supposed to go home, and I would just avoid it. And this was between the ages of probably 10 and 12, 13, something like that. But there were a lot of occurrences, and there were a lot of very scary things that happened, a lot of running in the night, moving, many, many times, and all those kinds of things. But in any case, what was my point? My point was, I wasn't particularly afraid of dying. I always felt the spiritual connection whenever anything happened. So that helped me cope with these things. And I got a lot of that by going to the beach. By this time, I was living along the coast in the Santa Barbara area, and I lived very near to the beach in Carpinteria. And I would just go down to the beach and feel God. And I was also searching for my own personal spiritual community. My family was not connected to any religion particularly. And I mean, we had a Christmas tree and things like that, but we had a lot of different religions in the extended family that later in life I particularly was recognized. But as a young child, I believe I was 6 when I first started wanting to go find a religious community. And I would go to, I would walk where we lived in Bakersfield. I would walk. There were several churches around there. And I would walk and attend churches. And my family was always supportive, but they were not, I might have said this. Maybe I didn't say this before, but I was thinking of it. My mother would say, I think God is more on a mountaintop than in a building. And she was pretty spiritual and in tune to a lot of things, I think, that were positive, but it was not organized religion. And like I went to my first psychic reading when I was about 5 with my mother. And I would tell her my thoughts. I dreamt every night. I dreamt these very, very vivid in color dreams. And I would tell her whatever I was thinking. And I remember being quite young, still in Bakersfield, maybe around 7 or 8, and telling my mother about reincarnation. And she didn't have, I don't think, any knowledge of that. And I probably didn't use that word. I probably hadn't heard that word yet. But I remember telling her that and her being very accepting. She was always very accepting about whatever my perspective was. So anyway, so I had a lot of spiritual connection, a lot of positive spiritual connection in my life. And it was mostly, or I don't want to say mostly, but a lot of it was related to protecting me. So I had this very strong belief that God was loving me. And so anyway, so when I was 17, I was on my way to school. It was right at the end of my senior year. I was on my way to school. I was actually living with my first husband. We were not legally married yet, which was pretty unusual back in 1970. But I, being so, I'm not going to tell you my whole religious journey, but I was very intent on being married, to have a full relationship. And we did not get married by any kind of legal or religious ceremony except between us. We had a ceremony with God, and that seemed true to me. So anyway, I was living with him, but I was on my way to school, and I was hit head on as I was waiting to turn left. And I remember seeing the car come at me and realizing it was going to hit me, and feeling some panic, and the steering wheel popped. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. It was before that was a common thing. And it popped, and my breastbone took the majority of the hit, great, wonderfully, but I lost my spleen and 20% of my liver. So, and I was about an hour from a hospital when this occurred. And I opened the door, not across, and told someone to go get my husband, because he was like just a few blocks from there. And anyway, I passed out then. And much later, I woke up at the hospital where I'm laying. It must have been emergency, but I'm laying like in the entry part of emergency. And I can hear a doctor saying, well, what are the results of her blood test, her blood work? And somebody saying, well, we couldn't get her blood because there's no blood in the extremities. And then that doctor started swearing at that person and said, well, you have to get it, take it, from her body, you've got to get to her blood. So anyway, I came to, and I don't remember being in pain. I don't think I was in pain. But I knew I was going to die. I knew I was very likely to die. I was very close to dying. And now I have to say, full disclosure, my death experience was not the norm from what I've seen on your site. And what I've heard in the past of, seeing white lights and going and talking to your relatives and stuff. That did not happen for me. But I did come to enough that I saw my mother, and at least one of my sisters was there. And I happened to be in a fight with my family at the time, and I was never going to talk to them again because they did not accept my marriage to my husband that was not legal. And anyway, so I really was done with them. But in this moment, I realized that all that mattered was love. And so I said some very dramatic things to my mother, especially, to not, that I didn't want her to feel bad, that if, I was going to be with God, and that would be, that would be okay. And that, I didn't want her to be upset. And I had a message for my husband. And then I went to, I don't know, but I guess I passed out or something. I'm not exactly sure, but I had a conversation with God. Now, my conversation was very powerful and very emotional, but not, I didn't actually hear anything. There was no auditory, there was no visual. It was mostly me talking to God, saying that I knew I was near death, and if I died, that would be great because I would be with him. But if I had a choice, I would rather go back and be with my husband. And I also, see, this is still powerful for me. I also asked for forgiveness if I was wrong by being with my husband, which is, what I was being told by my family, and no one else knew about it really. I chose not to tell them at school or anything. But anyway, and so I said, if I've done something wrong, please forgive me. But, as much as I'd love to be with you, I would really like to go back and be with my husband if it's my choice. And I went on and had surgery, and I understand that they said that I, died during the surgery, and they brought me back. And I woke up in intensive care, surrounded by my family. And my father had come from California. I was living in Michigan. He'd come from California. And there were all these indications that one might have thought I must be dying. And they, of course, thought that. But I knew that I wasn't dying. I knew that if I came awake, I would recover. And I was in intensive care for 8 days, and then another like 5 or 6 days in the hospital. but I always knew that I knew that I was going to recover, and I recovered remarkably fast based on all of my injuries. And I've never had any sense of fear at all of death since then, for sure. Um, and I've been in situations where, you know, I might have had that fear. I remember especially one time in an airplane with my husband, where I used to fly a lot and go different places and things. And something happened and the airplane dropped, you know, and the the oxygen stuff came down and stuff. And my entire thought was, thank you, God, that I'm with my husband. I wasn't at all thinking about fear of dying. And so, and as a psychotherapist, of course, and a Reiki therapist too, but especially as a psychotherapist, I've had a lot of people talk about fear of dying. I mean, I know that's a big, big thing. And of the little bit of time that I put into understanding your organization, I got the impression that there are, you know, people that are interested in pursuing this kind of research and understanding because of so much fear of dying, and how the experiences that people have had going to the other side and coming back. So anyway, so I have a little knowledge about that, but for me, it's, you know, it's not been an issue at all. And that most recently played out, I suppose, in the pandemic, you know, when so many people especially many people at all levels, but especially in my demographic, have been very afraid. We're very, very afraid. And I was not afraid. And my children were all afraid for me and my husband, a different husband. But anyway, they were afraid for us, you know, felt that we were so at risk and didn't want to, you know, endanger us by coming to see us or letting us see our grandchildren and all of these things. And I was very adamant, you know, we are not scared. You know, we do a lot of things that I believe are going to be protected, both with our spiritual vibration, and very much with our nutrition and supplements. I'm into all that stuff. And but I said, you know, if it did happen, it would be okay. We're all going to go at some point, and if it's our time, we'll go. And I fortunately was able to convince them, not initially, but over time, before things, you know, became more open, to come and see us and let us be, you know, near our grandchildren. And I'm so grateful. But oh my gosh, let me see. I told you, Diana, I don't know if I have 2 hours, but let me think. What else is related to that? Oh, I have my most significant experiences with the other side personally have been with many people close to me have died. And this is connected to Reiki as well, because I've used Reiki in those encounters with them to assist them and in making their transition. And that maybe I'll go into that for a moment. The first time that I used Reiki to help with someone transitioning was early on, back in the 90s, when I first had my first connections to Reiki. And I remember it was two people that were really significant to me. One was an astrologer who had, you know, been very, very helpful to me in understanding a lot of different things, especially about my relationships, because relationships have always been, it might surprise you, my being a psychotherapist and everything, but you know, my connections with people have always been really important to me. And so anyway, my own relationships were also somewhat challenging, which isn't too surprising based on what I told you about the way I grew up. But in any case, first, I believe it was this astrologer, and I learned that she was dying. And I don't think I had particularly training about that in my Reiki training. I could be wrong, but I felt compelled to flow Reiki to her to help her make her transition. And I did that. And I never got any feedback, but she did pass fairly quickly after that. And then the other one was a psychic who was also very instrumental in my life, who died. And when she was going through, I knew she was dying for longer, because I saw her quite often, and I never gave her any hands-on Reiki, but I flowed Reiki to her from a distance many times. And what I felt most was, I suppose, my own peace in assisting her. I didn't know, I didn't really know what she felt about it. I don't remember. She may have said something to me. The next person was my mother. And my mother had Alzheimer's. And so I think it was through my connections with Louise Hay. Some of you may have known of Louise Hay. I believe that's where I got the impression that she was kind of stuck between worlds with this Alzheimer's, that she was making a transition, but she wasn't able to. And so I started flowing Reiki to her, and I did flow Reiki to her in person as well as at a distance. And she ended up passing, not when I was with her physically. She was down near one of my sisters, but after she died, she was the first person that ever came to me after they died and talked to me and said, and it was actually through the psychic I mentioned earlier. It was not direct, but the things that she said to me, I knew that it was really her, because she said things that no one could have known. And that was very comforting to me, because she said, it wasn't comforting to me from my own feelings about fear of death or anything, but it was comforting to me to know that she was doing well, because she told me that, she knew that I had always wanted her to be happy. And that didn't work out in this life, but that it was true for her there. And that was very, very useful to me to hear that. And then, I don't know, I don't usually cry like this. I don't know what's going on. That all of you are so powerful. You're probably affecting me. But anyway, and then the next person, I'm trying to remember, I don't want to be out of order, but I guess it doesn't matter. But I think the next person that died was my first husband. And I had been with him for 14 years and then divorced him. And we'd been apart, I believe, about 18 years at this point when he died. He died of alcoholism. And I went to see him because I always knew that I would. I was by then married to my husband now for about 10 years, and very, very happily married, and very different from what my relationship had been with my first husband. But I had deeply loved him. And I knew that he would be afraid to die, because he was raised Catholic, and he was what they used to call, they probably don't even say this anymore, they used to call a fallen away Catholic. And I knew from things that he had told me in our life together that he would be scared, very scared to die. And I had suggested that my daughter get a priest for him, and his mother resisted that, and so they hadn't done that. And my intent was to go down there and give him support in so that he wouldn't be afraid. I really wanted to still his fear of dying. And as it turned out, I never talked to him about any of that, but I did give him Reiki, and he was in a lot of pain. And he clearly, he didn't know about Reiki. Before I had Reiki, I was still doing hands-on. I'd been doing hands-on healing really throughout my life with my family and friends, well, family especially. And with him, I'd done a lot of that. And I said, would you like me to touch you like I used to do to, help the pain? And he said, yes. And as soon as I put my hands on him, things changed. It was very, very powerful. And I ended up staying there for hours, which I hadn't expected at all with him. And anyway, a few days later, I think maybe it was a few weeks later, but not too long after that, my daughter called me and she said, Mom, they tell us that Dad is imminently dying. Do you really think I should get a priest? And I said, yes, I do. I think you should get a priest. And he'd been very fitful in a coma, but not doing well at all for some time. And they got a priest, and the priest did the last rites, which by the way, I'm Jewish, which I'll explain. Maybe I'll explain how I found that out, and I got to be Jewish, in my life, and found that was my spiritual community. But anyway, and I was by then. So my daughter was raised Jewish, so she knew nothing about about Catholicism or the last rites or anything. And after they came and they did that, she called me and she said, Mom, he passed. He's gone now. And she was happy because she knew he was, she said it was the most bizarre thing. She said this priest came in and he started saying all these horrible things. Now, I hope I'm not offending anybody who's Catholic, but apparently they talk about, I don't know, but some of the things they said upset my daughter. She was like, this is happening. They're saying this stuff and I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible. I shouldn't have done this. She said, and then as soon as the priest stopped, and it wasn't someone they knew or anything, he left. She said, Dad raised up, looked into the distance, took a breath, and he was gone. And I thought, no, to me, that's such a beautiful spiritual experience. And of course, I was flowing Reiki to him also, of course. And then after that, he was one of the ones that came to me, again, through a psychic. And he did say that I don't remember exactly what he said, but something about it being good there, and that he felt like he was making progress or something. And he wanted to apologize to me, which was very nice. And then I'm going to tell you another spiritual experience that I had that is along my trajectory of spiritual growth. As I mentioned, I went to all these churches when I was a little girl, and I didn't mention this, but I did not know that I was Jewish. And I knew there were Jews in my dad's family, but they weren't real closely related, and I just didn't know about that. And I had never lived near a synagogue when I was a child, so I never walked to a synagogue. But I did when I lived in Montecito, California. I found this amazing Episcopal church called, gosh, do I remember what the name of it was? All Saints by the Sea. And now you've got to remember, this was it must have been the early 60s. And I was 12, and I went to the priest and said I wanted to take adult confirmation classes. And I'm sure that was unusual. And he allowed me to do that. And I went through these adult confirmation classes. And at the end of it, he said, if I wanted to join the church, I had to be baptized. And then there would be a confirmation ceremony. And I really racked my soul about what to do, because when I read all of the articles of religion and even, the liturgy, which we'd been saying in church and stuff, which I loved the beauty of that church, and I felt so connected there. I knew that I did not personally feel Jesus. I always felt only God. And so I went to the priest the day before and I said, I just don't know if I should do this. I'm just really conflicted. And he said, which I feel was God talking through this priest, he said, it can't hurt you. It's only a blessing, and God will direct you. Yeah. And that was so true. And so I became an Episcopalian, and I was an Episcopalian for a long time. And I was, I taught Sunday school and all those things. But much, much later in life, when I was 31, I was married. I was married to a Jewish man, and he was an atheist and had no spiritual connection at all. And I didn't understand how that was possible, that you could, because I always thought everything was about spiritual connection. And so I was reading about Judaism, trying to understand. And as I did, I just knew that that's where I fit spiritually. And I went towards all kinds of spiritual teachings in Judaism, and and converted. And then I went to visit my mother's mother, my grandmother. And if any of you are Jewish, or even if you're not, you might know that traditionally being Jewish comes through the mother. It's been acceptable through the father for, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years now, in the Reform. But all the others only recognize through the mother. And my grandmother said to me, well, you didn't have to convert. You were already Jewish. It's just been a secret. We've kept it a secret. And a lot of things fell into place for me then that I really had learned through my mother and different things. But anyway, so I found that, and through that, I studied Kabbalah and all of that. And Kabbalah, my Kabbalist, an Orthodox rabbi Kabbalist, actually, I went to him when I studied Reiki, because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't doing something that was against Judaism. And this would be, by the way, was the opinion of the rabbi I saw. It might not be the standard opinion, but he again said, no, he said, Reiki, that is the same as the Kabbalah. That's the same energy. That's a good thing for you to do. And so I got a lot of support in those ways. Let me think. What else do I have to tell you about all that? My spiritual experience with Reiki also was challenging, because I felt very disappointed that when I found Reiki to help heal myself, that I wasn't completely healed. Now, I didn't really understand about that I understand now, that Reiki, it isn't like you can go and just be completely healed. It's all about connecting to that high vibration and letting that energy of that vibration, that Reiki light, go where it needs to go, and letting go of outcome. And so that was hard for me. And because my health still did deteriorate, even though I was doing Reiki. But I didn't feel like angry with Reiki. I felt like there's something wrong with me, that I'm not having this success that I should be. And how can I be this spiritual person and this psychotherapist and all of this, and not be able to heal myself with Reiki? So that was really a challenge. But practicing Reiki actually helped me accept. The more that I did it, the more I was able to accept that it was okay. And I came to a place where I no longer practiced psychotherapy. I retired early because I had always worked in a very intense way with people, both individuals and adults. I mean, individuals and adults. I started out with adolescents and adults, but then I worked with only adults, but individually and in couples therapy. And all of those things, there were two things that really made me stop working. Was one, my memory. My memory got worse and worse, and I could not remember. I had a few more car accidents along the way that, nothing where I nearly died, but, injuries. And I just could not remember. I lost a lot of my memory. I mean, I had a near photographic memory, where I could remember things when I'd been working with someone, which I did a lot of intensive long-term therapy. I could have been working with someone for 5 years. And if a part of my understanding of what therapists do is you connect, when people share things with you, you connect it, you help them connect it. So they might say something and I could connect it to something they said in their first session, because my memory was so clear. Well, as that got worse and worse, I was not able to remember I wasn't able, not only could I not remember that way, but if I got a couple new clients, I called them patients at that time, a couple new patients, I'd get them mixed up, which was just, crazy. And it was so distressing to me because my whole life, my main goal since I was a very small child, trying to help everyone in my family, was to help people. And so this idea that I was, letting the people down by not being able to uh, intellectually assist as much as I had in the past, and also that I would sometimes be in such incredible pain, especially with migraines, but I had pain, all kinds of body pain. Um, but when I would just be so bad, I could not go into work. So I became unreliable, which is extremely bad for a therapist, for a psychotherapist. I mean, I think that I just couldn't continue because I knew that it was harmful to people. And so I didn't practice therapy or anything in any kind of professional way for um, a long time, probably 15, 20 years. I'm not sure exactly. No, it wasn't 20, but it was more than 15, I think, years. And but I but the but I did get somewhat better through time. And I found original Japanese Reiki, which most of you, if you know about Reiki, I'm sure many of you do, you probably have experience with Western Reiki, which is what my first introduction was, which is very focused on hands-on healing and physical healing and healing others. Is a lot of it, even though I didn't go into it for that. I always went into it for myself. Uh, but anyway, when I found this different way of doing Reiki, practicing as a personal practice, and not so intellectual in some ways as what the one that I had taken was, um, it just really resonated with me very, very much. So I got training, a couple of different trainings from very well-known Reiki master teachers. And I started working hands-on using and a lot of personal practice, but I started working with people in my life. I invited like all my personal medical practitioners to let me work on them without charge or anything. And my friends and acquaintances and all of that. And I got some experience working with people. And I realized that this was really something. I mean, my connection was so much stronger. And um, and I felt this strong desire to teach other people how to do this, so that because with my health, I knew that I was very limited in what I could do. And so I decided to start teaching. And I started teaching at the local college, which was a challenge. At first, they didn't want to let me, but I talked them into it. And I've had uh, many classes at the college and many classes, private classes. Most of my students have gone on to the higher levels of training, and I'm really happy that they're working with other people. But anyway, so let me think. Let me wrap. I think I might wrap this part up and see if there's questions and comments. But anyway, I have been working with people now professionally as a Reiki therapist for 5 years. And a couple of years ago, after the pandemic, when I stopped working hands-on, I started working only at a distance in video calls with people. I realized how incredibly powerful that was, and that always I spent a portion of the time listening and talking with people. And after I'd been doing that for a while, I realized that I was actually doing psychotherapy with these people as well as Reiki with an energetic base. And so anyway, that's what I do now. That and teaching. Teaching is my, in many ways, my biggest focus. But I do have a small private practice where I work with people, and I combined Reiki with tapping, which is EFT, if any of you know of that. And that has been incredibly useful. And I teach that as well. But, you know, I want to do something. This might be really inappropriate. So if you think I shouldn't do this, Diane, or if anyone, if people are really unhappy with it, I would kind of like to give all of you a raise you empowerment. If you're familiar with Reiki in the Western tradition, you'd think of it as an attunement. My understanding is that the founder, Mikao Sui, gave empowerments always when he connected with clients or students. And I know none of you are clients or students, but we are in this mutually spiritual place. And I think that Reiki is all about balancing our physical, emotional, and spiritual selves. So I would love to do that if that seems okay.
I don't have any problem with it. I think if anybody personally has any problem with it,
You can choose not to receive it if that's the case. I mean, you don't, just because I flow it to you doesn't mean that it's it can't do anything bad to you to begin with, but it also won't affect you at all if you're not open to it. So should we ask if people want to comment in the chat about this before I do it?
we can do that. Does anybody have any comments
Desire
about
to
it?
do it? Do you want to do it or not want to do it?
I would find it very interesting, personally.
Okay, great. All right. And then after that, we'll open it up to questions and comments about anything. Okay.
We have a couple
All
of
right.
people. We would 3 people. I'm open, yes, and would love it
Okay,
so
great.
far.
I'm glad.
So
That's great.
anything
Okay.
to be lost in the effort.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start with a meditation. It's called Joshin Kokyu Ho. If you are familiar with that, it's probably going to be a little different. There's lots of different ways of doing it. But it's the breath of earth and heaven meditation. And I'd like you to close your eyes, sit as comfortably as you can. Take a few breaths. See, sense, or feel that light above your head, a ball of light above your head. And if you don't see, sense, or feel it, just think of it. As you breathe in, breathe that light, that ball of light down the center line of your body, all the way down to the point 2 or 3 finger widths below your navel. It's called the hara in Japanese. You may know of it as, what is the other name for it? I can't think of it right now, but anyway, if you may know of it as another name. As you breathe out, breathe that light back up to above your head. Breathe in, breathe that light down the center line of your body, all the way down to the hara, at point 2 or 3 finger widths below your navel. Breathe out, breathe that light back up to above your head. Let's do that a few times. Now on the out breath, I'd like you to let that light go down through your hips, through your legs, through your feet, down, 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 deep into the center of the earth, where the light is. As you breathe in, breathe that light from below all the way up through the earth, through your feet, through your legs, through your hips, up to the hara. Breathe out, breathe that light back down again, through your hips, through your legs, through your feet, down, 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 deep into the center of the earth. As you breathe in, breathe that light from below all the way up through the earth, through your feet, through your legs, through your hips, up to the hara. Do that a few times. Now on the out breath, we're going to let that light go both up to above your head and down to the center of the earth. As you breathe in, breathe that light from above and below. Let it meet in the hara. Breathe out, breathe that light back up to above your head and down to the center of the earth. As you breathe in, breathe that light from above and below. Let it meet in the hara. Breathe out, breathe that light back up to above your head and down to the center of the earth. Breathe in, breathe that light from above and below. Let it meet in the hara. Now on the out breath, we're going to let that light expand to fill every cell of your bodies. Now we're going to let that light expand to completely fill your auras 1 to 6 feet around you. The next out breath, we're going to let that light expand to connect all of our auras, all of your auras and mine, all of us connected, encompassed in a ball of light. The next out breath, we're going to let the light expand to fill the rooms that we're in. Now we're going to let that light expand to fill the buildings that we're in. Now the communities that we're in. The states that we're in. The countries that we're in. Now we're going to let that light expand to fill the whole earth. Each out breath, we're going to let that light expand beyond the earth to fill the solar system, to fill the galaxy, to fill the universe. With each out breath, we're going to let that light expand farther and farther to infinity. We're now connected to everyone and everything, everywhere. Now, I'd like you each to think to yourselves, I'm open to receiving Reiju empowerment and healing myself by receiving whatever I need. I call yo, I call yo, I call yo. Take a few breaths and come back. If you have water, it's a really good idea to drink some water now, and maybe for the next few days, drink a little more water than you normally would. Now, I'd love to hear people's experience. If you want to put it in the chat, that would be great. And if there's questions or comments about the Reiju empowerment or about any other thing, and I should have said at the beginning, anybody watching this video also would receive that empowerment. So it's available to anyone watching it. And if you want to watch this recording and connect to it again, you can. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Be interested to see how that goes. Sarah said, I'm a level 3 Reiki practitioner. I had the same worries about Reiki conflicting with my religion. My teacher encouraged me to practice Christian Reiki. It is a beautiful thing.
I'm sure it is. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? It doesn't have to be about the Reiju empowerment. It can be about.
Sandra said, I love that healing. Thank you. We all raised our empowerment to receive the healing we all need, and I felt the earth shift under me, even though I'm in stillness.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing.
There are a lot of comments. Magnificent meditation. That was beautiful. Thank you. Um, Barbara says, please, Diane, resend this to us. I really love this. Thank you so much. This will be available on our website once Vicki gets it put up tonight or tomorrow. And you can access it through the website. Anytime you want to do it again, it's available to you. I think your message is, it's very important to have somebody like you, Sally, because we often have speakers like Anita last month, who's had a really intense experience and has had so much opportunity to share and think through and all kinds of analysis and stuff. But we need to know that not everybody even knows that they've had an experience. I think clearly you're a near-death experiencer. Everything you said says to me, this is what happened to me, and this is why I am who I am. But I know you haven't been in a community and a situation to really do a lot of analyzation of that and a lot of discussion. But I think people, it's great to hear you because you haven't. Because it's kind of new to you to look at yourself this way and see how it is. But it's exactly the way it is when a person has a near-death experience at whatever age. You come back, first of all, with a sense of that love. And then you also have this strong sense that death is nothing to fear. And then you also have this sense of kind of having new eyes to see the world, where you see that things are not necessarily the way they look. There's a lot more to life and death and everything than it appears to be. And all of these things happen when a person has a near-death experience. As I say, you don't even have to know that you've had one, but I think it enhances your trip when you get to understand that you really have had one, and that these are the things that have happened to you, and as a result, I have been able to produce these things. And in your case, you've launched a career in Reiki healing. In Reiki healing, sorry. Um, you've experienced this new career, and you're able to help people in a different way with so much more depth than you would otherwise be able to do.
Well, thank you so much, Diane. You know, it is interesting to me that since I've been practicing Reiki therapy, I see people heal emotionally and physically and spiritually so much faster than any other way that I tried to help people throughout my life. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Clara asked if you have a web page. Clara, the web page is on the email that I sent out this morning and earlier this week, and it's also on the bio about her on our own website. So you can just click on it and go to her.
And it is enlightenmentreiki.com. And that is, enlightenment is the goal of Reiki practice, according to the founder, Mikao Usui. And that's my goal. And one of the beautiful things of the Reiju empowerment is that does, somebody mentioned this, didn't use exactly the words I'm going to, I don't think, but I felt it was the same thing, to raise our vibration. And the goal is to raise our vibration higher and higher, and to come to a place where we can be at peace no matter what comes.
Exactly.
That's the enlightenment, according to Mikao Usui, is not about, it's not reaching nirvana as it might be in the Hindu practice, but it's coming to that place where we're always at peace here. You know, that we're in our embodiment, our physical embodiment, we also have the light and we are at peace. And I find, I certainly am not able to maintain peace at all times. And most of us can't while we're still here. But making these connections, making this connection, having Reiki become a focus of my life, and I find this with a lot of my students and clients as well, it's something that we can quickly regain that peace by making these connections. So
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I think one of the things I learned on the other side is that there is no one way to do anything. I think everyone needs to be open to as many experiences as possible and do exactly what you did. Take from each one what's the most resonant to you, and learn to discern what is resonant. You know, it, it, um, my guides talk to me all the time, and they boss me around. You know, uh, but it's because I'm open to it and because I ask for it. And I learned that if anybody ever tells you this is the way that it's supposed to be, you know, be very wary of that, because there's as many ways to do anything as there are souls in the universe. So
I agree. I agree completely. And I think that being balanced and connected, you know, that if we can do that, however we can achieve that, then if we do what feels right to us, we're always on the right track.
mhm.
And that's, you know, people, you know, I mean, it's as physical as getting the right doctors to help you when you need doctors. You know, having people come into your life that uh, that help you to grow and them to grow, and you know, things are different the higher that we have our vibration. And so whatever we can do, and I really like the fact that, from what I can tell of your organization, which is so amazing, that that's what you're all doing. You know, you're finding the way to be at your highest spiritual level, and impact others and yourself. I think it's a wonderful thing. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of it.
Oh, so glad you're here. Claire has asked, what advice do you have to help sleep?
Well, I think that meditation that I did is a foundational meditation that Mikao Sui taught, and it really does help you be calm. And so I would definitely recommend that. And let me think. For one thing that's interesting about that meditation is that many people who have had difficulty meditating seem to be able to do that easier. And even if and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So I would say that is what I would recommend as far as sleep goes. And also, I didn't tell you guys this. I gave you an empowerment. So if you already had experienced Reiki attunements, you already have a connection to Reiki, but this would still boost you. This would give you even more. That's one of the beauties of having empowerments. But I put Reiki into the hands of everyone. So I would suggest that another practice that I like very much that could help you sleep would be to make your connection. But even if you don't remember how or whatever, you've got it in your hands. If you intend with your hands, you could put your hand on your forehead. That alone might help you sleep. And if you could do this comfortably, and it might not be when you're trying to sleep, but if you could have one hand on your forehead and one hand on the back of your head, maybe even for a few minutes before you lie down, and just intend to flow Reiki to yourself, because that's very calming to many parts of your brain, which could be affecting you. If you have particular problems that are bothering you, like a lot of times people can't sleep because of stress in lots of different ways. Another thing would be to put your hand on that hara, which is the earth energy, and a hand on your heart. And many people can sleep better doing something like that, intending Reiki to flow. That's just off the top of my head.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kitty says, you reminded me of my Reiki training that I stopped using except for myself and my dog. There was one time years ago that I helped a man with whom I worked. He had terrible pain in his leg. When I gave him a treatment, the pain totally stopped, though it lasted through the night. That surprised me. It shocked him, and he would not allow me to treat him again. Reiki is powerful. Now I remember again.
That's so wonderful. That's great. And you can all embrace this at whatever level you might choose, what feels right to you. It's wonderful.
You said something about you were talking about healing yourself. I've run across many healers who felt that they couldn't heal themselves, or they couldn't, whatever they did, they could do for other people, but they couldn't do it for themselves. I don't know if this is really widespread, but from my experience, it is quite widespread that people have trouble uh, doing it for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting to me because when I started working with other people, I actually got much better. And the more that I teach and the more that I work with people, the better I physically feel. I have not been completely healed. I still have issues, but I'm in much, much better than I had been throughout my life. I mean, it's quite amazing. And one of the reasons is that my understanding is that with Reiki, when we flow Reiki to another, it comes through us to them.
Exactly.
So we're getting a treatment every time we're sharing. And that's a beautiful thing too.
That's kind of what happens to me when I play my flute. It comes through me.
Yes.
And I'm very, very much aware of that. And I think that energy is very healing. Okay, let's see. I think we're caught up. Anybody else have any comments or questions they would like to add? don't see too many.
Well, I'm sorry. I knew I didn't necessarily have a couple hours on this subject, but I'm really glad to have been here. I can always go on and on, you know. I mean, I do that. But
Well,
it's
yeah,
very special to be here.
the spiritual experiences, are always interesting. If you have any others of those you'd like to share, that would be fine. But it's not necessary. What was most important to me was that people had a chance to see you and your stage of development, and how you've come to grips with this without a lot of other additional input from the outside. Like a lot of people, this is Chicago's a large area, and a lot of people here have access to a lot of people with a lot of information. And so, um, you know, it's a lot of people don't have that access
Mhm.
all over. So it's wonderful to see somebody who hasn't had a lot of access, and really not, when I had my experience, I didn't know what happened to me either, but I was immediately put in touch with a lot of very powerful people
Mhm.
who live close to me, and there were ways for me to access their path and for them to access mine, which isn't available to everybody.
That's
But
true.
you manage to do it all anyway, and manage to integrate it into yourself, and you're still in process of developing that, and sharing it with other people, and that's what's most important.
Thank you. I do have a couple that came to mind that might be worth sharing. Uh, when I first came to Traverse City from London, I was in very bad shape. I was not able to work at all. I was diagnosed as being permanently disabled. I was 36 years old, and for various reasons, I had left money and my clothes and a lot of different things in England, and I never did get any of those. So I was, you know, at a very low ebb in life, and and I wasn't able to get my disability because when I went to England, the county that I had worked for cut off my disability, and I couldn't afford a lawyer. I mean, it was all very strange. But anyway, and I didn't feel like I could be a psychotherapist then, because as messed up as I was, mentally too, because I was in the I left a second husband in England, so I was like, how could I help other people? But anyway, I was uh, I was guided to go to a 12-step program, Al-Anon, and then from there, adult children of alcoholics, which I had heard of, but when I was a psychotherapist, uh, I couldn't do something like that, of course, because how could I admit that I was that messed up? But and I had money, I could always pay for therapy, before that. But when I got to that point, I didn't have any other options. And this is interesting. This kind of goes along with what you were saying, Diane, about my life, that I seem to have this trajectory that gets me to the right place. And anyway, I went to these 12-step meetings, and right away, I mean, I shifted. It really helped me very, very quickly, in my mental and emotional, and the physical was still not doing that great. But I was doing a lot of spiritual connection. And I particularly like Emmett Fox. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Emmett Fox, but I found him through the 12 steps. And and then I realized one of my grandmothers actually that was her. I asked her what her religion was, and she told me it was science of mind, which is what he was, I think. But anyway, I hadn't known that. But anyway, I'm driving down the road, and I had a lot of pain then, all the time, a lot of pain, and physical pain. And I was driving down the road, and I was talking to God, which is something that I have done my entire life. I talk to God a lot. And I said, God, I realize now I was very fearful, by the way, when I had all this problem and I didn't have any money and everything. I was staying with a friend and I was very fearful of ending up homeless because I really just didn't have any income. I didn't have anything. I couldn't work. And I'm driving down the road and I said to God, God, suddenly I realized that as long as I'm connected to you, it doesn't really matter, even if I'm homeless. And as soon as I made that connection, 80% of my pain left. Now, I'm not saying it didn't come back eventually, but it left and it was gone for, a while. And it was such an amazing, amazing experience. That was a really, really, really big one. Prior to that, I had where I was meditating, and I didn't meditate in the traditional ways. I couldn't. My mind wouldn't shut off, but somehow I was connecting to God, and I saw this ball of light, which is interesting because now I work with the ball of light all the time, but I didn't know anything about that then. I saw this ball of light coming toward me, and it scared me, and so I canceled it, like I wouldn't accept it. And then almost immediately I regretted it because I realized that that was something really good coming toward me, but it scared me. And that was kind of, and that happened probably months, just a few months before I had that healing experience driving down the road. But but all of those things that happen in life, I agree, Diane, they're all important. The things that appear to be good, the things that appear to be bad, all of those things uh, work for us. They work for everyone, but those of us who are really on the conscious path of raising our vibration, of making our connections, of healing ourselves and others, I think that they just work so powerfully and they can work so quickly. And I know that many people at my age, with physical issues, um, and even when I was much younger with a lot of the issues that I had in life, uh, feel discouraged, really feel like there's, uh, like it's just downhill from here. Like many of my friends will say things like to me like, well, you know, I'm so old now, I'm just getting more and more pain, worse and worse and worse. And I recognize that that's true. That's true for many people. But for me, that's not true. I mean, I feel better all the time. I'm feeling better all the time. So I know if I can feel better all the time, everyone can feel better all the time. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to live forever. It doesn't mean we're not, we're all going to go, I believe, at the time we're supposed to. And I don't think we need to fight that. But as long as we're here, my desire is to live with the highest vibration I can and to enjoy my life, because enjoyment is I think fundamental to humans. We're supposed to have joy in our lives. So anyway, I don't know. That's my closing statement. I'm not making it to 2 hours.
Barbara said there's no need to apologize. She's really grateful for your message. And Marilyn asked if is the Kabbalah a method of healing?
Oh yes. Yes, definitely it is. It's
I
go ahead.
college in my course of learning about the spiritual world when I started doing that.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I,
Um,
I studied Kabbalah quite a lot in the 90s. And I found like really good teachers then. Um, Before that, I was interested and did a little bit of, I tried to understand it, but until I got a really good teacher, I didn't understand it as well. Um, but that that is definitely for me, that is very connected to Reiki. I mean, I do really believe that Reiki is the same healing energy. And you know, for uh, for physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. And most of us can use physical, emotional, and spiritual healing.
exactly, exactly. I've been leading this meeting now for 25 years, and in a nutshell, I'd say what I learned is that basically is that this is the Earth School, and we all come here to learn lessons. When the lessons are over, we go home. And it's all about learning lessons. So nothing is really bad, even the bad stuff. You know, you can learn something from it. If something that can teach you something, it's not bad necessarily. So there's so many ways to look at things, and
I
uh,
have something else to say about all that. Okay. The
sure.
precepts, the Reiki precepts, those of you who have studied Reiki probably have at least heard of the Reiki precepts. My understanding of the Reiki precepts is that they are fundamental to the practice of Reiki. And I didn't really understand that initially, but I do understand that now. And Mikao Usui said that if you only embrace the precepts, if that's the only thing you ever do, that is enough to bring you to enlightenment. And I believe that a part of that is because everything is addressed in the precepts. The first is for today only, which is living in the moment, being present, not living in the past or the future. The second is anger not, which my understanding is that doesn't mean never become angry. That's, a lot of the interpretations are you should never be angry. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true. I don't think that was the intent of the founder. It's that feel your anger, trust, recognize that your anger is there to help you. Don't use your energy to suppress it. Acknowledge it. Do what you can to address it, and then turn away from it. Do not embrace, don't ruminate about it. Don't embrace it so that it's something that you carry with you. The second is worry not, which is the same thing. Fear is there to help us. I mean, we have to, if we didn't have fear, we would constantly be putting ourselves at risk. So, whenever worry or fear comes, acknowledge it. Do what you can to address it. And once you've done that, let it go, turn away from it. Do not embrace it. The third is be humble and thankful. And a lot of people, when I teach, have said to me, well, how can you be humble? Or it's really hard to be humble. If you're acknowledge, there's so many ways that it's hard to be humble. And I believe that if you're thankful for everything, that's automatically makes you humble. So it's not that we have to deny our gifts or deny the things that we have that are unique to us or any of that, but that we need to be always thankful and recognize that it's a gift. Those things are all a gift to us.
Uh-oh.
What happened? I can still see
Something's
everybody.
breaking up.
Okay.
Vicky?
Hello.
There you are.
Okay. All right.
We're
Okay.
all fine here, Jan.
Okay, so where was I? Let's see. Oh, and the next one in Western Reiki, it's often work hard, something like that. And my understanding is that what the founder actually said was be diligent in your practice, do what you're meant to do, be your true self, which is too long. So there's a way of saying it faster. But those three things, and to be diligent in your practice, is your practice of Reiki. It's not about go out in the world and work hard. So one of the translations that I got that I particularly like is be true to your way and your being. Because if we're not being true to ourselves, then obviously we can't be on the right path. And then the last one is I forget what it commonly says in Western Reiki, but in my tradition it says be compassionate to yourself and others. And the be compassionate to yourself is first. And I think that's really important for us to remember, to be compassionate to ourselves. Many of us are not compassionate to ourselves. We can often be our own biggest critic. And so anyway, that just came to me, and I don't know what you said now that triggered that, but something did.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. That's very helpful, I think. Uh, Ben said, can you give us some tips on how to call the angels or archangels for specific help? I hear that each one are assigned to a particular need.
Well, what I can tell you about archangels is a Kabbalistic prayer that uh, that addresses that to some degree, but not so much about. Well, I'm going to just tell it to you real quick if I can do it, if I can think of it. Let's see. The way that I learned it was in the name of the Lord God of Israel. May Michael, the protection of God, be at my right hand. Gabriel, the power of God, at my left. Before me, Uriel, the light of God. Behind me, Raphael, the healing of God. And above my head, Shekinah El, the presence of God. That didn't exactly address your whole thing, Ben, but that's what comes to my mind.
Um, my instruction has always been that you don't need any way to talk to God or your guides or the angels, that you can just do it and it gets through. That it's not dependent on you being schooled in a specific way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
God is always there. Your guides are always there. Your angels are always there.
Thanks, Diane. I would agree with that. It has to do with your intent. So if you intend to connect and you're open, then you can receive the message, and you may receive. Everybody receives differently. Like I almost always receive by a feeling or a thought. Like I said, I don't generally have auditory. I do have a little more visual in the last few years. Of energy and things like that. That's gotten a little stronger, but the feelings and the thoughts are the main way I receive. So if that's what you do, if you're looking for someone, something auditory or something visual, you might be missing what you're thinking or feeling. That's your guide talking to you. So.
Yes, that's good. He also asked, who is Makasoi?
Mikao Usui. Mikao Usui, it's Mikao Usui. He's the founder of Reiki.
Okay, you want to tell anything about him? Do you know?
I don't know if I've got it right here or not. I saw something earlier that I thought about sharing, but I don't know where it is. Let me see if I can find it real quick. No, I'm not gonna be able to find it. Okay, okay, I know a lot about him, so I can tell you something about him. He was born in the I believe it was like the 1860s, I believe, and that was when it had just recently become outlawed in Japan to be samurai. All of that had been outlawed, but he came from a very high level samurai family. In fact, his family, I don't know if any of you know anything about Japan, but his family were the protectors, like the guard of the shogun, who was the head, I believe, kind of general, for the country. So they were very high in the ranking. Samurai was the highest ranking in class in Japan, and they were extremely high in that ranking. So he had a lot of influence of martial arts, of spirituality in lots of different ways. Some was Buddhist, some was the mountain religions, which would be more shamanic, kind of an earth healing. So he experienced a lot of different things. He was an extremely bright man who traveled a lot and was searching always himself for enlightenment. Satori is what it's called in Japan, which would be that connection, that high spiritual connection where you can be at peace no matter what may come. And he did this by lots of different practices of fasting up on mountaintops, and many, many things. And he was known throughout Japan as a healer. He helped people after earthquakes, and I think there was like a big fire, all these different things he helped. And he had students for quite some time. But towards the end of his life, he went to the top of, and I can't remember the name of the mountain because, you know, my memory isn't so good. But he went up to this mountain, and I believe he was up there, I don't want to tell you wrong, but many, many days fasting. And he had a very strong spiritual experience. And that's when the Western tradition says that's when he got Reiki, which may or may not, there's debate about that, but it doesn't matter. He got a really strong infusion of Reiki, of the light. And from then on, his power was stronger in helping people. And he hadn't really been seeking the power to help people, but that came to him. So anyway, so he continued to work with people, and there were thousands and thousands of people that he worked with. He became so well known that shortly before World War II, or maybe it was like 20 years before that, I don't want to tell you wrong, sometime in that time period, the military, the Japanese admirals in the military, came to him and asked him if he could teach them how to heal people quickly for emergencies out on ships, because they didn't have enough medical professionals for that. And so he developed a different way of teaching Reiki, which is where the Western tradition came from, which had to do with hands-on and with a focus on healing people, and the symbols and a lot of stuff was from his desire to assist in this healing. And so anyway, so that was pretty amazing stuff, and that was so powerful that came through. You didn't ask me about the history of Reiki. You asked me about Macau. So, well, that it's hard to tell it without the history of Reiki. But anyway, he lived to be, I believe, 60, around 60, and which was kind of a long time to live then, by the way. But anyway, he was this very spiritual. He was known to be very loving and spiritual, and have a bad temper. What else was known about him? I mean, you know, he was a human. He was not just a spiritual person. He was a person, and he may have been, I mean, there's all different stories about what happened to him. I mean, what he did in his life. Some of them have been verified, many of them not. There's some belief in Japan that he was actually like a bodyguard for the I think it was the emperor, but I don't want to tell you wrong, at some point earlier in his life. But I mean, he just did a lot of things, very intellectual, very, very well educated, and very, very spiritual man. And his goal was to raise the vibration of the world and to teach people how to do that. And he didn't actually, until the military came to him, my understanding is he didn't actually try to teach people how to teach others so much as he would help the people that he was healing. He would teach them how to heal themselves and to use it, you know, like for their families and things like that. Oh, this was an interesting part of his story. At that time in Japan, most people that had any special knowledge or abilities kept it for their family. They kept it very private in their family as to boost their family only. And he had a very strong belief that it should not be kept to the family, that it should be shared, and that the goal was to raise everyone, and that the more that we raise everyone, it will raise the world. If there's a, you know, which follows along with some Kabbalah teaching that, you know, if we get a certain, we don't need to raise everyone's vibration. When we get enough people, that are raising their vibration, then it will raise the rest of everyone else, the world. So that was a long answer. I don't know if I answered your question, but I hope so.
Wonderful. We have one more question.
Okay.
Linda asked, "How did it come to the U.S.?"
When did it come to the US?
How? How?
Oh, okay. Now this is a great story. Now everyone that has Reiki knows the name of the person I'm trying to remember now. Let me think. What was her name? Oh gosh. It'll probably come to me. But anyway, this Hawaiian Japanese woman had health problems, and she went to Japan, I think originally for surgery or something. And the story goes, oh gosh, I can see her name in my mind, but not quite. But anyway, she was on a table to get surgery. She was about to be, and she suddenly had this vision that she was not supposed to get the surgery, that she could be healed in a different way. And so she didn't do the surgery, and she went to one of the students, I don't remember if he was an admiral, but he was a naval doctor who had begun his own, he had gotten Reiki, he'd learned Reiki from Mikao Sui, and Hayashi, I believe was his name. And Takata, that's the woman in the Hawaiian woman. But anyway, he had a healing center, and he had several different people working on each person, flowing Reiki at the same time. And he had amazing results. And somebody told her to go to him, so she did, and he healed her. And she I think it was over a few months or something. I mean, I don't remember how long, but in any case, she then wanted to learn Reiki. And at first he said no, but then she kept approaching him, and he finally agreed. He let her learn and work in his clinic. And then when she went back to Hawaii, he had given her, I believe, like the first and second level. And then he came to Hawaii, I believe, and gave her the third level and gave her permission to take Reiki to the world. And so at that time, this was right after World War II. This is where the World War II thing is. Right after World War II. And there was a lot of animosity toward Japan in our country and the Japanese. And so she may have altered the story to some degree to make it less Japanese. But in any case, she taught, I believe, 22 masters. And from those masters, it has gone throughout the whole world. And even Western Reiki went back to Japan, because there was a belief that there was no Reiki in Japan, which wasn't true. But it was not, they were not connected. They were not aware of it because it went underground after the war. And some of the places were bombed, or I don't know, somehow destroyed. But in any case, that's why it's very different, is that it had a very different trajectory. And my first Reiki training, I was very close to Takata. I believe I was 8th in line. And I can't tell you off the top of my head all the whole lineage, but that's something in Reiki, that you have a lineage, and the closer you are to the founder, the better. And with that training, I was very close. And all my other trainings, I've had 3 other trainings, I've been closer and closer. And my last one was actually not through the Western tradition at all. And I believe I'm 4th in the line. So that's kind of exciting. But anyway, that's hopefully I answered that question.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I think it was just a great light in the week, so or the month. Really wonderful to have you. Thank you, Sally, so much for sharing with us today. And I hope that all of us will join with us next month and hear about Life Between Lives with Susan Weishart. And thank you all for being here. So
Thank you again for having me.